Did you know a sailor on a sinking Great Lakes freighter survived nearly 38 hours in the freezing November waters of Lake Huron, drifting on a wrecked raft surrounded by dead men? His name was Hale. He shouldn't have lived. The way he survived is even stranger. So how does one man cheat the lake when an entire crew goes down? That's the question. The answer reaches further than you'd think. The date is November 29th, 1966. The ship is the SS Daniel J. Morrell, a 603-foot steel freighter that had hauled iron ore across the Great Lakes for 60 years. 60. They called her the Queen of the Lakes for her endurance. Her crew was 29 men. Her captain was Arthur Crawley. But here is where it gets dark. That endurance was about to become her death sentence. According to all that's interesting, the Morrell was an aging ship pushed late into a brutal shipping season. November on the Great Lakes is its own kind of killer. The gales of November have swallowed more vessels than most oceans, and sailors knew it. Crews still went out because ore meant money, and money kept the freighters running until the ice closed the lakes for winter. That night, the storm was monstrous. Winds screaming past 60 miles an hour, waves climbing 25 feet. The Morrell and her sister ship, the Edward Y. Townsend, were both fighting the same furious water on Lake Huron. The Townsend turned back. The Morrell pushed on. Here's what that meant for the men aboard. Around 2 in the morning, Hale was asleep in his bunk when he heard a sound no sailor wants to hear. A loud bang, then another. The lights flickered. Books fell from a shelf. The ship was breaking, not leaking, not flooding, snapping in half. Quick one, if this is useful. A like genuinely helps more people find it. Hale ran to the deck in his underwear, grabbed a life jacket, and watched the front and back of the ship grind against each other in the dark. There's a twist here almost no one is talking about. Think about the physics of what happened. The Morrell didn't sink the way you picture a ship sinking. She split clean across the middle, like a stick snapped over a knee. The two halves separated in the water. And here's the horror of it. The rear section, with its engine still running, actually kept moving forward on its own, pushing past the front half as men screamed across the gap. The villain here isn't a person. It's metal fatigue. 60 years of cold cargo, heavy ore, and freezing water had quietly weakened the steel of her hull. Older ships built in that era used a steel that turned brittle in extreme cold. The colder the water, the easier it cracked. That November night, the lake was barely above freezing. The men who built and sailed her trusted that hull. They had no reason not to. She'd survived 6 decades, but the same age that made her famous made her fragile, and nobody saw the failure coming until the deck buckled under their feet. Hale and 3 other men managed to climb onto a small life raft. No engine, no shelter, just a flat platform tossed by 25-foot waves in water cold enough to kill in minutes. They had almost no clothing. The temperature was below freezing, and the nearest help had no idea the Morrell was even in trouble because she went down so fast there was barely time to send a distress call. The last piece is the one that reframes everything. By morning, 3 of the 4 men on that raft were dead. They died of exposure in the night, frozen beside Hale as he clung to life. He was alone now, drifting, surrounded by the bodies of his crewmates, soaked, half-naked, in November on Lake Huron. This is where survival stops making sense. Hale later said something kept him alive that defies every rule of cold water survival. He fought the urge to give in. At one point, near death, he said he was visited by a vision. A man with a beard appeared and told him not to eat the snow and ice forming on his life jacket because it would lower his body temperature and kill him. Whether you believe it was a hallucination from hypothermia or something else, Hale obeyed. He refused the ice, and that refusal may be the reason he was still breathing when rescue finally came. Because here is the number that reframes the whole tragedy. Dennis Hale survived roughly 38 hours exposed on that raft before a Coast Guard helicopter spotted him. 38 hours in water and air cold enough that the other 28 men aboard the Morrell did not survive at all. He was the only one man out of 29. Doctors who treated him couldn't fully explain it. By every medical expectation, a half-clothed man should have died within hours in that cold. Hale lived through nearly 2 full days. Some credited his slightly heavier build for insulation. Some credited sheer stubborn will. Hale himself credited the bearded figure who told him not to eat the ice. Here is exactly what happens next. The disaster forces a reckoning. Investigators trace the sinking to that brittle steel and the punishing late-season schedule. The loss of the Morrell, and later the famous Edmund Fitzgerald in 1975, pushed new safety standards across Great Lakes shipping. Better hull inspections, stronger steel, survival suits that could actually keep a man alive in freezing water. And that last detail is the one that should stop you. Dennis Hale didn't just survive a shipwreck, he survived something that, by the cold, hard math of hypothermia, was unsurvivable. Before I go, here is your historical footnote of the day. The Great Lakes hide a graveyard most people never think about. It matters because these inland seas have claimed more ships than you'd ever guess. An estimated 6,000 vessels and roughly 30,000 lives have been lost beneath their waters since records began. Lake Superior is so cold it barely lets bodies surface, which is why sailors said the lake never gives up her dead. Whole ships sit perfectly preserved in the dark, frozen in time. Crews still aboard, waiting in water that refuses to let them rot. That is your footnote for today. If the story of Dennis Hale, clinging to that raft for 38 hours, stayed with you, tell me in the comments whether you think that bearded figure was a hallucination or something more. Subscribe to Weird History. New breakdown every day. See you in the next one.